Hi, welcome to Veteach. In today's video, we are going to deal with a reading comprehension exercise. In IELTS, you are asked 40 questions which you're supposed to answer in 60 minutes. You can also consider this section as promising and relatively easy scoring. The level of difficulty of this passage is on par with the actual IELTS exam, so this is going to be of a great help to you. So let's go solve this passage now. The title of the passage is The Plight of Rice. What do you mean by plight? The meaning of plight is sad or a difficult situation. Alright, so if you know the meaning of plight given in the title, you know what kind of a tone this passage is going to be in, right? The word plight in the title is setting the tone of the entire passage. Rice is a tall grass with a drooping panicle that contains numerous edible grains and has been cultivated in China for more than 6,000 years. A staple throughout Asia and large parts of Africa, it is now grown in flooded paddy fields from sea level to higher mountains and harvested 3 times a year. According to the Food and Health Organization of the United Nations, around 4 billion people currently receive a fifth of their calories from rice. So the first paragraph in the passage explains what kind of a crop the rice is and where has it been growing, but how long has it been growing, so which is 6,000 years. And it was grown, it is a staple throughout Asia and large parts of Africa, and now it is being grown in flooded paddy fields from sea levels to high mountains and harvested 3 times a year. Now the meaning of the word panicle here, what is the meaning of the word panicle? Drooping panicle is, a panicle is a branching cluster of flowers. What is drooping? Drooping is falling, right? Drooping is falling, and a panicle is a branching cluster of flowers. And what is the meaning of staple here? I'm sure you know this, but let me go ahead and tell this for you. Staple is main or important. All right. Okay. Let's move on to the next passage. Recently, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan have slightly reduced rice consumption due to adoption of more Western diets, but almost all other countries have raised their consumption due to population increase. Yet, since 1984, there have been diminishing rice yields around the world. In this paragraph, the author says about the consumption pattern of rice in multiple countries. Moving on to the next paragraph, from the 1950s to the early 1960s, rice production was also suffering. India was on the brink of famine and China was already experiencing one. In the late 1950s, Norman Borlaug, an American plant pathologist, began advising Punjab state in northwestern India to grow a new semi-dwarf variety of wheat. This was so successful that in 1962, a semi-dwarf variety of rice called IR8, developed by the Philippine International Rice Research Institute, was planted throughout Southeast Asia and India. This semi-dwarf variety heralded the Green Revolution, which saved the lives of millions of people by almost doubling rice yields from 1.9 metric tons per hectare in 1950 to 64 to 3.5 metric tons in 1985 to 98. So what is the meaning of the word heralded here? Heralded means started. All right. So in this passage, the author is talking about a gentleman called Norman Borlaug, an American plant pathologist, who has advised Punjab state to grow a new semi-dwarf variety which has doubled the yield. Now the name of this variety is IR8, and because of this, the Green Revolution has started. Moving on to the next paragraph, IR8 survived because as a semi-dwarf, it only grows to a moderate height and it does not thin out, keel over, and drown like traditional varieties. Furthermore, its short, thick stem is able to absorb chemical fertilizers, but as stem growth is limited, the plant expends energy on producing a large panicle of heavy seeds, ensuring a greater crop. In this passage, the author is talking about how the IR8 has survived and the properties that the IR8 has. Now, in this passage, what is the meaning of expend? Expend means spend. Okay. And what is the meaning of keel over here? Keel over is fall over. Moving on to the next paragraph. However, even with a massive increase in rice production, semi-dwarf varieties managed to keep up with population growth only for 10 years. In Africa, where rice consumption is rising by 20% annually and where one-third of the population now depends on the cereal, this is disturbing. At the current rate, within the next 20 years, rice will surpass maize as the major source of calories on that continent. Meantime, even in ideal circumstances, paddies worldwide are not producing what they once did, for reasons largely unknown to science. An average 0.8% fall in yields has been noted in rich rice-growing regions in less ideal ones. Flood, drought, and salinity have meant yields have fallen drastically, sometimes up to 40%. In this passage, the author is trying to explain what happened to the plight of rice even after introducing semi-dwarf varieties and how the yield of rice crop has fallen down due to some unknown reason to science. The sequencing of the rice genome took place in 2005, after which the IRRI developed genetically modified flood-resistant varieties of rice called Sub-1, which produce up to 4 times more edible grain than modified strains. In 2010, a handful of farmers worldwide were planting IRRI sub-1 rice. Now, over 5 million are doing so. Currently, drought and salt-resistant varieties are being trialed since most rice is grown in the great river basins of the Brahmaputra, the Irrawaddy, and the Mekong that are all drying up or becoming far saltier. In the year 2005, the sequencing of the rice genome took place, which developed a new variant of rice called Sub-1, which produced up to 4 times more edible grain than non-modified strains. Only a handful of farmers worldwide were planting this variant, but now over 5 million are doing so. With global warming, many rice-growing regions are hotter than 20 years ago. Nearly all varieties of rice, including IR8, flower in the afternoon, but the anthers, which are little sacs that contain male pollen, wither and die in soaring temperatures. IRRI scientists have identified one variety of rice known as Odisha that flowers in the early morning, and they are in the process of genetically modifying IR8 so it contains Odisha flowering genes, although it may be some time before this is released. In this paragraph, the author is trying to explain about the effects of global warming on the IR8 variety, and is also saying that IRRI scientists have also identified one another variety of rice known as Odisha that flowers in the early morning. And they're also trying to put this variant in IR8 so that it contains Odisha flowering genes. While there is a clear need for more rice, many states and countries seem less keen to influence agricultural policy directly than they were in the past. Some believe rice demand will dip in wealthier places as occurred in Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Others consider it more prudent to devote resources to tackling obesity or to limiting intensive farming that is environmentally destructive. In this passage, the author discusses about the future of rice. He says that some believe that the rice demand will dip in wealthier countries like Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, and others consider it more wise to allocate resources to tackling obesity and limiting excessive farming. Moving on to the next paragraph, some experts say where there is state intervention, it should take the form of reducing subsidies to rice farmers to stimulate production. Others propose that small land holdings should be consolidated into more economically viable ones. There is no denying that land reform is pressing, but many governments shy away from it, fearing losses at the ballot box, all the while knowing that rural populations are heading for the city in droves anyways. And as they do so, cities expand, eating up fertile land for food production. In this passage, the author is trying to explain about the government's policies towards subsidies and land consolidations. If the land consolidation does not happen, the entire rural population will move to cities, which would lead to the city's expansion and eating up fertile land for food production. One can only hope that the IRRI and other research institutions will spearhead half a dozen mini-green revolutions independently of uncommitted states. Now let's try to solve the questions. It's basic true or false questions. Let's look at the first question. Rice is only grown at a low elevation. Here's a tip for you. Whenever there is a word, extreme word mentioned like only, it's mostly going to be a false statement. Either ways, we'll refer to the passage and check if it is false or true. In the first passage and third sentence, it's given that it is now grown in flooded paddy fields from sea level to high mountains, which is from a low elevation to high elevation, which makes this particular statement a false statement. Question number 2, rice has been cultivated in Africa for 3000 years. And the answer to this question is not given because of the fact that there was no mention about Africa in the entire passage. There was only a mention of China. Question number 3, since 1984, rice yields have decreased due to infestation of pests. Again, the answer to this statement is not given because there has not been any mention about the infestation of pests in the entire passage. Moving on to the next question. Norman Borlaug believed Punjabi farmers should grow semi-dwarf rice. And the answer to this statement is that it is true. This information is given in the 3rd paragraph of the passage. Question number 5. The Green Revolution increased rice yields by around 100%. And the answer to this question is that it's true. It is given in the 3rd paragraph of the passage that Green Revolution has almost doubled rice yields from 1.9 metric tons per hectare to 3.5 metric tons, which makes the statement true. Moving on to the next set of questions. In this set of questions, you're just supposed to fill in the blank. Traditional varieties of rice. What are the properties of traditional variety of rice? That they grow tall and blank, which leads to collapse of the crop. Let's refer to the passage and look at the properties of the crop, which is IR8 survived because of its moderate height and it does not thin out, keel over and round like traditional varieties, which makes the answer grows tall and thin. What are the properties of IR8 variety? Absorbs fertilizers in its short blank. It's given in the same paragraph as before that the IR8 survived because of its moderate height and that it has short, thick stem. So the answer of 7th question is short and thick stem. With a large panicle of heavy seeds, it produces a bigger crop like mentioned in the same paragraph, which is 3rd. What are the properties of sub-1 varieties? Are flood resistant, produce up to blank times the amount of grain than non-modified varieties. And this information is given in the 6th paragraph of the same passage, which produce up to 4 times more edible grain than non-modified strains, which makes our answer 4. Now grown by over blank farmers. And this information is given in the same paragraph, which is 6th. It says 5 million are doing so, which makes our answer 5 million. Properties of Odisha variety. Flowers in the early blank so its anthers remain intact and pollination can occur morning. And this information is given in the 7th paragraph, which says have identified one variety of rice known as Odisha that flowers in the early morning, which makes our answer in the early morning. Moving on to the next set of questions. These are multiple choice questions. You just have to choose one right answer. Question number 12. States are more interested in blank than stimulating rice production. And the answer to this question is given in the 9th paragraph, which says others consider it more prudent to devote resources to tackling obesity. So the answer for this question is confronting obesity, option C. Question number 13, blank disappearing as urbanization speeds up. And the answer to this question is given in the same passage as before, which is cities expand eating up fertile land. So the answer to this question is option B, fertile land. That is about for this video, guys. Thank you.